All right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Freezin NFC North Podcast, episode 126. Vikings on top, Jaire gone, Lions rebuilding, and of course, Eberflus is officially the worst. Plus, NFL Combine Nuggets. Everybody, thanks for joining us. I think we should have seventh letter coming on soon. But before we get started, where can everyone find you, Rhino, as we get started?
At Vikings Uncensored on YouTube and Facebook, at Vikes Uncensored on the Twitter X machine. We're doing shows Friday, Saturday nights. We're on a little couple week hiatus here. We'll be back next week, though, for the last word before free agency starts. So working on some stuff for that, and a lot of good stuff coming.
Awesome. Definitely like and subscribe, especially if you still think the Vikings are on top. We're going to be talking about that. But obviously, it's always good to have another Bear fan on, and always love having you on, Nick. Where can everyone find you as we get started?
Yeah, no, appreciate having me, man. And it's always fun to get this perspective. I like the format that you have with this. @_ Nick Whalen on Twitter. Nick Whalen @Nick Whalen. But the original guy has like 12 followers, and he won't give up the title, so I have to underscore it. Bear Report, kind of spin-off channel, is the Hallis Beat. That's a podcast we have going. It's also on YouTube as well, so it's cool to be affiliated with the Bear Report. And then I write at Football Guys as well.
Awesome. And obviously, have a great voice there that you bring to us. So, the deep voice there. Appreciate that as well. Definitely like and subscribe, especially for all us Bear fans and anybody scared of the Bears, which they should be, coming up in the next year or years to come. And I know someone who's not afraid to, share his views, but maybe he's a little bit scared. Lane, where can we find you?
Oh, definitely scared. Not really. You can find me on Twitter at LHenkins4, LHENKINS and the number 4. That's probably where I do most of my stuff. You can follow me on TikTok too and see my previous adventures traveling with Packers. Same handle for that too.
All good stuff. Definitely like and subscribe. And, as we get going, hey, it's the off season. I know a lot of people are going on hiatus. I try not to, because you know what? There's always time to poke fun and troll at each other and just in good nature talk about different things. But you know what? We don't see this very often. But the last couple of years in the off season, the Vikings have been rated one of the top teams by their players. Give us a little perspective on that, Rhino. And you hang your hat on that a little bit. Talk about that. And I don't know, maybe that has more optimism for you as an organization going forward for the Vikings.
Well, it speaks to the culture that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell have built since they've been here. No secret, at the end of the Mike Zimmer era, it was a mess. The culture was shot. The fan base and the players and everybody else was kind of on the downside. But kudos to them for building it up. The new facilities play a big part in it. US Bank Stadium, one of the newer and nicer stadiums in the league. Twin Cities Orthopedic Performance Center. The training facilities are, by most accounts, there isn't anything better in the league from what they've got down there. The Wilfs have not gone on the cheap for any of that stuff. They put a ton of money into it. And, word has gotten, we've seen it, with already last year with some of the free agents. And I think it's going to come again this year that, Minnesota is a destination where players know that if they're going to go, they're going to get treated well, and they're going to have the best of everything that they can get. So,
that's not necessarily something everyone can always say about Minnesota, that, hey, Minnesota is a destination, and no one's like, hey, a vacation, I want to go to Minnesota. But when you look at, all the players that you got, Obviously, we talked about that organization, and everything. Justin Jefferson, all of that. I mean, and one of the best stadiums, right? And so, like, I don't know about you, Nick, but when you hear all these good things about Minnesota, I mean, are you kind of like outside looking in? Are you echoing some of those same sentiments, fandom aside?
Well, I mean, selfishly as a Bears fan, I'm just like, well, that's cool because Kevin Warren had a huge part in building that stadium, and the Bears needed a stadium. So cool, good things are on the horizon for Chicago. To me, I think Minnesota's been very interesting. You were talking about free agency, and they've had their hits and misses, but I mean, Kevin O'Connell has definitely been a hit. And then you have some of your skill positions have worked. I mean, Sam Darnold worked after that was a huge question mark. It's gonna be a really interesting offseason for you guys. I mean, Cam Bynum's a free agent. I assume that I'm good friends with Thor. I'm sure you are as well, or know of Thor. And
I know.
He is JJ McCarthy's dad, grandpa, best friend, son, like everyone. I think is with JJ
fan
McCarthy,
club president,
is
stalker, all of that stuff.
Than Thor is. Are you on the same page of like Darnold leaving and just letting McCarthy ride?
Absolutely. I mean, this was the plan. From the beginning last year, things got sidetracked a little bit due to McCarthy having this meniscus issue, but the plan always was for Darnold to be that bridge guy until McCarthy is ready. And by all accounts, everything they've been talking about with JJ, even during his rehab when he couldn't actually physically be on the field, he was doing a lot of training and a lot of work, kind of like what Jaden Daniels was doing with Washington with the VR training and things like that. So I know Kwesi talked about it at the combine when he did his presser yesterday, I think it was, that, yeah, he's coming in, he didn't get the playing time last year, but he's been a year in this system. So he knows the verbiage. He knows the plays. The kid's been, ever since he could get back into the training facility, he was in there. He's been in the film room. He's been in the quarterback meetings. He's been in all that stuff last year. So, he's ready to go. Everything that I've been hearing is he's probably going to be full go by OTAs. So I'm ready for it and I'm excited for it.
So Lane, I had a question. Obviously you've covered the Packers. From your picture, obviously you've held the camera, and I know Packer fans, especially us up north, we talk about having that outside home field advantage, and presumably, I mean, this is obviously well ahead of what's going to happen. Presumably, the Packers are going to be the last NFC North team to actually have an outdoor stadium. So when you kind of look at that, what are your thoughts as far as doing a camera and kind of covering a team outdoors? Is that really that much of an advantage? And what are your thoughts on that?
As technology gets better, I don't think it's as big of a advantage as it used to be. I mean, just look at the Packers. They are always like, ooh, frozen tundra. It gets cold, we play better. Well, how many times now have they lost big games in January or in the December, playoff implicating games or playoff games where it's snowing or it's below 30 degrees. So it's not really becoming a big advantage anymore. I still think it would be sacrilege, though, if Green Bay put a dome over their stadium.
Well, the other part too, and I'm not trying to rub it in, but just I live in Wisconsin is, I mean, losing to San Francisco and Tampa in the playoffs at home. If you want to go super far back, it'd be Atlanta with Mike Vick, but like warm weather teams, that wasn't an advantage. And I would think it would be, and it just hasn't, gone according to plan, whether that's the players they bring in aren't cold weather guys or they're not a run based and defense based team. I don't know if that would be, play into it as well.
And every now and then they do have those type of games where it seems like, okay, they're the cold weather team playing in the cold and beating up on one of those Southern teams. A couple years ago, they played Tennessee, I believe it was the 2020 season, and AJ Dillon just ran wild on them.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, that's what we want when it gets cold and it's snowing, but it doesn't happen enough anymore.
Well, that was the Thanksgiving game. I did go to that game with the Dolphins, and I don't know if that was just kind of, the Dolphins not being ready, but yeah, that was, and a little bit of, obviously, Lambeau calls, which I will continue to throw out there. But yeah, I mean, it just like Miami, the players didn't look like they even wanted to be there. So I mean, right, it does happen, but maybe not when it matters as much as it used to.
Right.
And with the Dolphins, Tua is one of those guys that seems like he can't play in the cold. So
it is funny when you obviously go into a Vikings game and they have the whole indoor stadium and they do the whole Frozen, montage or whatever, and then they have the fake snowflakes coming down, and it's like, really, but it is what it is,
we could always open the doors and let the wind blow it in too, I suppose.
You could. Although, I do prefer as a fan, I mean, just the overall atmosphere, be able to enjoy it and not be wrapped up in cold or in cold weather gear. I would rather watch an indoor football game than brave the temperatures. That's just, and maybe that's just me being a little weak, but that's, hey, I want to enjoy it. I want to be able to have my food and not have to take off a glove or something to drink my soda or something. But
I don't know if I'm just getting too old. I don't want to go to a game in person. Dealing with the people and just the parking and if it was going to a baseball game, I think is different, like the tailgating part of that. But just look with football, I'd rather be almost at my home. And plus, with how things are, I can watch multiple games at the same time and red zone or whatever. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but I prefer not being in person to watch games. And they're so expensive now; it's getting ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. The tickets and the concessions,
parking,
yeah. Well, that's another thing with the Bears. I mean, raising ticket prices. I mean, it is crazy how expensive it is. That is absolutely a factor. All right, let's kind of move on to speaking a player that has been a factor that I don't know where he's going to go. Obviously, Lane. There's now speculation with Jaire Alexander. He's been a big part of your team, but the word is that they're shopping him, considering trading him. Obviously, it's going to reshape the defense. So, what are your thoughts on that? What's the latest that kind of you're hearing on that?
So it seems like if they get a good offer, he's probably gone. And what I know a lot of fans are expecting is a trade for maybe Myles Garrett or Max Crosby out of Vegas. That's what they want.
No.
I don't see that happening. But I think it's probably going to cost somebody either a high second rounder or maybe even a first rounder because they value him very highly. But his tape lately has not been great. Ever since he signed this deal that he's on right now, he hasn't even hardly played. So
there isn't anybody that's going to give a first round pick for Jaire Alexander right now.
I don't think it's going to happen.
Especially if they have to play Minnesota, because every time that Jaire goes up against the Vikings, he's hurt so he doesn't have to face Jefferson and Madison. So
not every time. I do have a wonderful clip that I got of him grittying over Jefferson.
I mean, the biggest issue is, well, and there's a couple of things. One is corners age really fast. And that was one issue I had with Chicago shelling out the money for Jalen Johnson is once they reach about their fifth year in the league, that's prime. And then anything after that, you're lucky to get stuff. And it goes with almost every corner. And we're seeing this with Jaire. I mean, he's played 8 or less games 3 of the last 4 years. And so, kind of as you alluded to, like, I don't see Green Bay getting a first, second, or third for him. I think if you get a fourth and the contract to take that on, and plus, if we're being honest, he's a weird dude. There's some locker room stuff he says, off the field stuff, where he's a different cat. And so, you mix all that in together. I mean, if he was like Mr. Locker Room, work ethic. I mean, because there were times, right, with this injury that was lingering this year, people were wondering whether he just didn't want to play or what was going on. So, I mean, yeah, there are times when you see like elite Jaire out there, but it's few and far between. So it's tough, I think, to get a high asset. I mean, you guys were seeing those players. Like, there's no way they're getting those players, but getting even like I said, even a day 2 pick, I think would be a shock for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think they want high value, but I don't see them getting it. The one thing that does work out well for them is they built in a lot of his money up front in that contract. So I just saw on Twitter before we started here, he's only got about 37 million left on 2 years. So it's a very tradable contract as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you look,
I'm just curious what you guys are going to do at corner, because Eric Stokes is a free agent and he's a free agent, and the I don't know, one of the Valentines, whatever you guys got going on at corner, your theme there. I think one of them is either restricted or a free agent too. I know Bullard can go in and play nickel, and you have Nix on the outside, but are you satisfied with that, or is that like going to be a huge priority this offseason?
I think it definitely needs to be a huge priority. I've been seeing a lot of mock drafts with Green Bay taking a corner in the first round, losing Jaire, Eric Stokes being a big question mark, whether or not they even want to bring him back. And then, yeah, I think it's Carrington Valentine is the one that is still under contract for another year or two. And then Corey Ballantyne is unrestricted, but only Carrington has been playing well. They have high hopes on a Kalen King that they drafted out of Penn State last year. He was on the practice squad all of last year, so he didn't get any game time. But there was a lot of talk about how well he did in training camp and in practice throughout the season. But it's definitely a big concern for them going into this year that they need to stock up on some corners and DBs in general, because outside of Bullard and Evan Williams, they don't really have a whole lot of safety help either. And Nixon didn't show up as a full-time corner really a lot last year. So he's more of a nickel, extra guy that comes in there and a special teams returner, as much as I know he doesn't want to just be labeled as a special teams returner. That's what he's really good at, and sometimes playing DB.
Yeah, and he's 28 too. So like you're thinking of like what's the drop off is coming there for him too. So yeah, I think Green Bay's offseason, it might be the most fascinating in the North, honestly.
Yeah, I think it could definitely determine whether or not they're fighting for one of those top 2 spots in the NFC North, or if they're going to fall to or stay third in the division, or even fall to 4th.
Well, speaking of a team that's probably going to go up to the number 1 in the division, the Chicago Bears, despite everything that happened, all of the adversity, Caleb Williams still was, showed a lot of growth, a lot of promise. And Matt Eberflus was ranked last in the rankings of coaches in the league by players. Not a surprise, obviously the narrative throughout the season. But when you look at obviously what we have now, Ben Johnson as coach, obviously we're excited as Bears fans, just everything that he has assembled. Are you a little bit, mad that we didn't make a move sooner on this, Nick?
In terms of?
Just kind of getting rid of, him before last season, or obviously now that we have Ben Johnson, it's, easy to be like, okay, this is how it was supposed to go.
So let me give you a scenario. Okay. Multiple scenarios. So let's say the Bears got rid of Justin Fields a year earlier. Then they would have ended up with Bryce Young, CJ Stroud-ish, which CJ Stroud fell back down to earth. Or a year earlier on Flus, and from all indications, Ben Johnson wasn't going to leave Detroit last offseason, basically no matter what, and you end up with whomever you want as the best head coach last offseason. Or you wait a year too long on both. And I tweeted this out actually this evening. And I don't know, I mean, the other NFC North fans, I'd be curious what you think. But like in terms of the last, 5+ years, I think Ben Johnson's the best head coach candidate. in terms of, it's easy to look back now like Kevin O'Connell or LaFleur, but like at the time it was, I don't know what we have. And then look at Caleb Williams. I mean, some have said he was the best prospect coming out since, like a Burrow or a Luck. If you said those are the two guys that were going to align and move forth, I think that the pain of the last 2 years was worth it.
Yeah, I as a Bears fan, I would say that absolutely. I mean, I don't know what the rest of you guys think is as far as that on the outside looking in.
Well, you guys are kind of used to pain, so waiting probably didn't hurt too bad.
The only team undefeated in 2025, is that what you're saying? The Bears?
Want to know. Still
a whole season left to come.
I love this here by Chase Sr. Listen to Matt Eberflus at the NFL Combine last year and Ben Johnson this year. The Bears might have the biggest head coaching upgrade in NFL history. I mean, that's a bold statement there. But
have you listened to, how many of his press conferences have you listened to? Enough. Like this week, like I listened to his Chicago local one with a local station with a few other ones. He has a personality. Like we've had, Lovey was a good coach, but like pretty dry. Dick Duran, RIP. I actually met Dick Duran and like interviewed him when I was a kid at camp. He was pretty dry. Flus was pretty dry. You go through the list, like we've had a couple of weird ones, like he was joking around, talking fun facts about Antoine Randall L. because he's a Chicago, like a local kid. He was joking with Big Cat. I don't know if you guys follow Big Cat much or not, but like, he was like, hey, so if the Bears and Patriots are in the Super Bowl, who are you rooting for? Like he was having fun back and forth. It's nice to have like a live person up there instead of like a puppet and like, okay, I have to say what I have to say because I'm, cameras on me and a microphone and the PR. Like that was refreshing, but also you can see how calculated it is. He's a smart dude. And going from 32 to somewhere in the average.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone knows we underachieved last year. You're going from that, just pure coaching, not talking about the 10th pick and a bunch of money and an extra second, and too early, seconds. Like there's going to be some significant improvements here, but just the coaching wise and a real person, I think it's going to lift the locker room.
I mean, what about you, Rhino? Are you kind of, obviously you still love KOC, but I mean, do you think Ben Johnson has that potential to kind of be a great head coach in this league?
I mean, the guy's a very good offensive mind. I mean, you can't dispute that fact of it. The thing I'm going to withhold a little judgment on here to see first is, does he have what it takes to be a head coach, or is he another one of those great offensive defensive coordinators who lit it up as a coordinator, but then when they got to the top of the mountain as a head coach, it's a different world. Now, can he make it work? Time will tell, but it'll be interesting to see with because I believe he's going to be calling plays too. I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I think they hired a young guy, up and coming young guy, to kind of be the offense coordinator, right? Nick, obviously he's not going to be calling the plays. Ben Johnson will be. I mean, but he's highly thought of as well. Obviously, the connection with Iowa strength and conditioning, his coach being his dad. He was with the Broncos last year. I mean, I'm excited for that pairing and just kind of what they're going to do with the players that we have and really kind of see what their strengths are.
Well, to me, it's pretty interesting in terms of how he built his staff. Like, so I listened to, a lot of the interviews I was mentioning. So he hired him a lot based off of what Johnny Morton said. So Johnny Morton's going to be the OC now for the Lions. And he said that he's like the next type of Ben Johnson is what he said. So he's going to be there organizing and doing things when he's not there. But if you look at like the group that he brought in, so Declan Doyle was a Sean Payton guy, New Orleans and with Denver. So that's a different type of offense. And then you have, obviously his history with, Dan Campbell and Randall L. And they have that different type of scheme there going on in Detroit. And then you have the name is losing me right now, but the passing game coordinator that came from Jacksonville, he was linked to Chip Kelly. So like you've like a few different offenses coming together. And he said, I didn't want to hire a staff that was my buddies. He says, I wanted to hire a staff that was different minds and that I would trust taking over, but also like we're going to collaborate. Like we're going to do this together. And to me, like if you think of any aspect, business, any area that you guys have of life, you don't want, bobbleheads, like everyone's saying the same thing. You want people to question things and to think in different ways and bring different backgrounds together. So to me, Ben Johnson just seems so calculated right now that it has me excited as a fan versus the worst calculations that we've had in the past.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, and they've used the collaboration word many times in Chicago, just not in actuality. Like a lot of times it's coach speak, you use the words, but behind closed doors, you're not actually doing what you're saying. And thankfully, yeah, I think Ben Johnson has everything kind of in place to do what he's saying and challenge the players and really make them better. And obviously, build on what we had there. We have the players and all that. And Lane, I wanted to talk to you. So you covered the Packers and where were you at when the whole kind of new coaching staff, were you covering them when LaFleur started? Where were you at then?
No, he started in the 2018 season, I believe. So I was still in North Dakota at that time. Funny enough, I saw somebody comment, Freezin, go to Minot, North Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there. I know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in North Dakota. We just got done with 25 below for 2 straight weeks. So
there you go.
Yeah. I remember I had to go outside and be on the news to tell people, hey, it's negative 75 out with the wind chill, so don't be outside like I am right now. But yeah, so I was still in North Dakota when that happened. But the whole feeling there was things got stale with McCarthy, and bringing in a new young guy was exciting and a culture change. And that's kind of the feeling that I think a lot of Bears fans are starting to feel with bringing in Ben Johnson, an offensive-minded head coach for once, and new young guys. Like, what could this be? There's lots of potential and lots of high hopes.
Yeah, I'm so glad that that it didn't come to fruition that we ended up getting McCarthy as the Bears coach. I would just like, I mean, I don't know what I would have done. I mean, it's just, back to the old. I mean,
that would have been an extremely Bears move. Put it that way.
Yes. That would have been. That absolutely would have been. And when you look at these coaches, obviously, that's a big part of it. Players have to play, and when you look at a team that's been on the top of the North and the Lions, 7 players not able to join last minute tonight, but the rest of us, when you look at the Lions, obviously they've been at the top the last couple of years here. There's huge changes within the team, new coaches, things like that. What about Nick? What are your thoughts on that and how that's going to affect them? And are they going to be in some sort of rebuild mode to just kind of like get a good feel of what the offense and defense are going to look like, or are you worried at all? Are you worried at all about these Lions?
I am, just because the Eagles went through this a couple of years ago. They went to the Super Bowl. Both coordinators got poached, and then they struggled for a bit, and then they're trying to find their identity. And then you have to find guys that are in personnel that's going to match what the new coordinators want, even though your head coach is the same. But let's be honest. I know I'm going to be, excited about Ben Johnson, but I don't think that's just like me as a Bears fan. Like, everyone saw this guy was dealing as coordinator, because prior to him taking over, he took over partway through one season, then was coordinator for 3. The offense wasn't going well. And Dan Campbell was hearing some whispers, right, of like, this guy might not be it. It might not go well. So you wonder, is it him, or, is it Ben Johnson? And then also you have Aaron Glenn, who left too, who had a good rapport. And that's a lot, not just those guys to replace. Randall L left, JT Barrett left. I think Aaron Glenn took at least one with him. Another guy left, I think, is the coordinator, DC, for the Jaguars. So like, they've lost a lot of coaches. And then you still have some questions on that team in terms of free agents, offensive line, like what's going to kind of happen. And to me, I think that they have to take a step back. I mean, they won 14 games. The odds of them repeating that are going to be pretty low. But just what's their identity going to be? They've been trying to kind of coach up Kelvin Shepard, I think, is their new DC the last couple of years. Like they've been like, okay, you're going to have this. You're going to take over whenever they leave. But there's always going to be a change. You can't always be like, well, this person's going to go right and it's going to be great. Like even the 49ers, right? Bill Walsh left. George Seifert's there. They had a few hurdles to go through, and it wasn't the same thing as Bill Walsh, even though Montana, Young, Rice were there. So I think that they are going to take a dip. It's just how big of a dip is what we have to kind of guess.
Lane, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess we'll see what Dan Campbell's really made of, if he's really fit to be a head coach, because this is all on him to bring in all of these new guys and coach them up and make sure they're all on the same page. I don't think they're going to win 14 games again either, but I still could see them maybe getting to 10. They're definitely going to struggle because that's going to be quite an adjustment, even through preseason and training camp and all that, to start the year playing your one-on-ones with other teams. It's going to be tough for them at first. I think they'll figure it out midway through the season, but I don't see them, winning handedly like they had a couple games this last season. So, we might be talking about the Lions not three-peating as NFC North champions.
And who would you say is going to be replacing them then, Lane?
Leaning Vikings right now just because of how they came out last year and kind of surprised everybody, but, it's kind of a toss-up.
I know you want to say another team. It's okay, Lane. It's a safe space.
I think the Bears need at least a year of Ben Johnson before I start saying, oh, they're pushing for that top spot in the division.
But don't the Vikings need at least a year of JJ or?
Well, we'll have to see.
I know you want to say the Bears. I know you do, and that's okay. That's okay. I get it. Let's go ahead. I mean, obviously this is way too early, but we got a chance to have all you guys here and hear some thoughts. When you look at these schedules for our teams, I think it's all going to be tough. Obviously, we don't have the complete breakdown. That makes a difference. When you look at some of these schedules, we'll just start with the Lions here since we're there. Obviously, home opponents, division. Dallas Cowboys, Giants. I saw on Twitter that the Giants, they have no quarterbacks under contract, and I think this is the it was tweeted that this is the best situation that they've had in a long time.
They're just going to run the wishbone.
And I know you remember this, Nick. The Giants played the Bears without a quarterback, and they just gave it to Saquon and still beat us. So
yeah, I like the wishbone, man. No, don't hail. I'm an offensive coach, so I like all that stuff. But what's interesting with the Giants bringing them up is I think the smart move for Minnesota is to lean on Daniel Jones in case JJ's not ready to start the year.
I think it's a very good shot probably the plan, unless somebody comes in and offers Jones a sizable contract to go be a starter someplace. I think the plan is for him to be the backup this year. So.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be interesting to see how all that shakes up. Joseph's saying the Lions would come in and whip the Eagles first game. I don't know. The Bears might possibly play the Eagles first game as well, which that would. I don't know if I would like that. Starting off against obviously the Super Bowl champ, right? So,
all right. I just have to get this off my chest, okay?
Yeah.
And again, I don't know those two guys very well.
Mm-hmm.
But I live here, so I follow this very closely.
Mm-hmm.
I am concerned about Green Bay, Lane. I'm being completely honest.
Wait. Concerned that they're actually not going to be good, or concerned that they're going to beat us?
No, concerned that they're going to take another step back next year. I mean, and again, I mean they should have not won a game in the division, for just being honest. They didn't look great. You lost Watson, who's probably gone all of next year. First, being honest, he's probably going to have another hiccup in recovery just because it's how he is. Josh Myers is a free agent. We talked about corner. Don't know what's going on there. I know that the defense took a step up this year, but I mean, they won 2 games against teams with a winning record. Like, it was a lot of beating up on some bad teams. And yeah, the Bears sucked. I get it, but they were close games. Like, they should have crushed Chicago. And you go through and the whole offense was like Josh Jacobs play action, but then the receivers didn't take the step that you wanted them to. I love Tucker Kraft, but then every time that you see some of these teams that like, we're going to give to the running back a ton, the next year, the running back takes a step back. Like, all of it, I'm just like, I don't know. Like, the question marks in the other parts of the division, it's like, okay, coaching with Detroit, but man, they're loaded, right? Like, they got talent everywhere. They don't have like, I don't know who's playing corner like Green Bay. And Minnesota, they have some holes on defense they have to kind of make up, but that offense is beyond loaded. Like, I can't say that for Green Bay, because before it was like, well, Jordan Love is amazing. Well, it was that one stretch of games, and then like last year he was good. So it's like, okay, if he's quarterback like what, 9 to 13 in the NFL or whatever you want to put him at, he's not going to carry when, because I like Jaden Reed, man. I hope he takes a step next year, but he didn't do it this year. So like, you put all those things in, and to me, I just don't know that they're going to be top 2 in the division. I would say almost for sure I don't see them in top 2 in the division. So, and you guys don't have the assets. You know what I mean? It's a late pick. It's not a ton of money. You have to extend Zach Tom. Like, you go through the list, I'm just like, I just don't know that they're going to keep up with the North, who I think is right now one of the lowest or most loaded divisions in the league.
It's definitely going to be interesting seeing where they want to go in free agency and draft wise going into this season. Because like you said, there's questions all over the place. Technically, we don't even have a kicker right now, and that's been an issue for them the past couple seasons since Mason Crosby left. So they've got lots of holes to fill and lots of questions to answer. And I think Jaden Reed definitely needs to take a step forward. And I think he only took a step back this last season because LaFleur didn't get him the ball as much as he should have. Those little jet sweep end arounds don't work every time. You do it more than twice a game, it's pretty easy to pick up on and figure out how to stop it.
Another question, Lane, for you is, are you guys going to trade Dobbs? Like, that was a weird thing in the season too. And he's probably your most complete receiver.
Yeah, that was a really weird mystery, I guess you could say, of what happened with him, because nothing really came out about it. And Romeo is such a quiet guy that I knew he wasn't probably going to say anything about it, and nothing ever really got out. So it was like, okay, well, I don't know what exactly happened here. And then he gets suspended. So that was weird. I really would not like to see them trade him because he, like you said, he's probably the most complete receiver that they have. But he's been one of the big pieces in trade talks that I keep seeing all over social media and everywhere. And I'm like, why? That's the guy that you have that is proven. And, I don't see Devontae Adams walking right back through the door like nothing happened. So who's really going to be your offensive focal point?
Green Bay has got to go out and get a number 1 receiver this year, don't you think?
They said that last year, and they decided to go with the we'll play receiver by committee, and I don't think it worked very well.
No, that's the thing. They got to, go find somebody who's can step up. Yeah, you guys have got like 5 number 2, number 3 wide receivers, but you don't have a number 1. And you haven't had it since Adams left.
Yeah, they're kind of just trying to play with things and see what works without spending a lot of money or bringing in a big star. And I don't know if this is just because they're kind of burnt out with the weird big star personalities of Aaron Rodgers and Jaire. And man, that's part of their like culture change of moving guys out and trying to rebuild, or I don't know what exactly they think they're doing, but it's not working that well. It's well enough that you're winning some games and you made the playoffs, but you're just barely getting into the playoffs. So you got to make a change somewhere.
And I would say the most disappointing part that, I'm a football coach, y'all that don't know, I've coached for 15 years. It's, I love that part of the game. The defensive front for Green Bay was really disappointing last year. I mean, Edgerrin Cooper, I think is could be really good. Like, we'll see. It gets some more consistency, but Quay Walker is not the guy. They're probably not going to pick up the 50-year option. Devontae Wyatt probably not going to pick up that option either. Rashawn Gary's oddly playing a low amount of snaps. He hasn't lived up to the contract. Lucas Van Ness, like that, not taking the step. Like you go, I mean, Kenny Clark, I think took a step back. Like so to me, like I just don't know how Green Bay's going to replace the question marks that they have. It's like you can do maybe one of the things like he was saying, like, okay, let's say you go after a receiver, but you're not going to have the assets to do it in multiple other spots. And then it's going to be like, you're going to Band-Aid corner and then defensive front, and who's going to know about center? You're like, I just don't know how you guys are going to do all of it. Have you kind of mapped out an offseason plan yet?
I feel like there's just so many things that they don't know where to focus yet. And I don't know if they're trying to make a big move before the draft or during the draft. Because if they're going to go for a star edge rusher, like a lot of fans seem to think that they should, Crosby or Myles Garrett, they need to do that now. So then they can get their plan together for the draft. I'm hearing a lot of hype of this wide receiver out of Utah State that they think could be this huge pickup for Green Bay in the second round. Just a big diamond in the rough, I guess you could say. And it's like, okay, great. Or just go get Devontae Adams back or sign T. Higgins. That takes your problem away right there. But I don't know if they're scared to spend the money or what their deal is, but they don't seem to have a set path right now of trying to figure out which problem they want to solve first.
Doesn't it depend on kind of where the front office thinks this team is, right? Are they contenders? Obviously, Green Bay, I mean, I guarantee regardless, ESPN, everyone's going to have Green Bay as a hot team, just because of the Green Bay Packers, because they've got Jordan Love. I'm guaranteeing there's going to be a lot of like narratives saying Jordan Love is going to have a rebound year and MVP, those type of things. I'm sure that stuff's going to come out. But, when you look at, I'm sure roster building and all that, it really depends on where you think the team is. Obviously, as a Bears fan, last year, I'm sure they thought they were all in on everything. They went and got Keenan Allen, and obviously that was a mistake. Thankfully he's gone, right? But when you look at the Green Bay Packers, yeah, I mean, do they hold off a little bit? I mean, they paid Jordan Love a lot of money. He's going to have to do something. If they think he's, that MVP type, I mean, maybe he can carry some of these wide receivers. But yeah, I mean, why spend a lot of money on Devontae Adams or one of these big name guys if you don't think they're going to be go to the Super Bowl, right? And are they even at that level yet? I mean, I feel the Packers, I mean, it's such an enigma. Obviously, I love on social media, saying how Jordan Love is mid and all these negative things about the Packers. I love doing that. But as Packer fans, I mean, honest Packer fans, when you look at it, I mean, it just has to be where is the team? I mean, you're gonna get excited every single Sunday because that's what Packer fans do. But I mean, honestly, is this a team that can go to the playoffs again, let alone get to where you thought you were going to be, this year? I mean, here's the thing, I keep hearing, well, we're one of the youngest teams. One of the youngest teams. That's kind of been the excuse. So I don't know. I mean, is 2025 a put up or shut up year, or is it just kind of you got to kind of go back to the drawing board and just kind of continue to rebuild, so to speak?
I'm hoping they're not going to start becoming the Steelers where they're okay with having a winning season and barely making the playoffs and then saying, "Oh, I don't know what's the problem." Because my dad's a Steelers fan and he is just so sick of watching them year in and year out, just barely scraping by. And I feel like that's kind of the path that Green Bay is starting to go on right now. I think Jordan Love has the ability to be a pretty good quarterback. Will he be able to take that step to be a great quarterback? I don't know. They certainly seem to think so with that contract. And I personally was not a big fan of that contract. I thought they needed to sign him, but not for that money. But I think if they don't do so well in 2025, you got to kind of tear down and refigure.
Mhm. Can I give you what I would do scenario wise? And again, this is a Bears fan. I think Jordan Love is way better out of play action. Like early on in LaFleur's time with him, I think they went back to that under center, outside zone. They still did some duo, but like, and then play action off that where you have, either the shallow cross or the guy leaking behind the line to your tight ends. Like I would get back to like the 2 tight ends because Musgrave was hurt last year. Hopefully he comes back. You got Josh Jacobs. Man, I like Wilson. Wilson's a great pickup as a backup running back. Dylan can leave, obviously. And get back to some of that. So we don't have to have 3 or 4 great receivers when we're doing this and it kind of a more like ball controlled like offense. So then it's not all on Jordan Love's shoulders. And then you think of like assets, you have to add a whole lot of assets to make that work. You got to replace center, you know what I mean? And then you can incorporate, okay, we're going to fix corner this offseason and maybe one guy in the defensive front 7. Like I would go that philosophy versus we got to be shotgun airing it out all the time. And we have to prove that Jordan Love is this contract. Like who cares? Like Malik Willis had a better record last year than Love did. Cause it was like, okay, let's tone this back. Let's do the floor magic. Cause he's a smart guy. Like he schemes well. And like, I would scale back the offense and do that. And then work on D instead of trying to be, some of the best passing games in the NFL. Cause like, I just don't feel like they have the horses for that, especially with Watson getting hurt.
Well, and a lot of what they were doing this last year and even the year before too was they were trying to run the ball and kind of control the pace of the game, but then they wouldn't get first downs. They wouldn't move the ball as much as they needed to, and then they wouldn't score. And then they get panicky in the late in the third and into the fourth quarter, and they're like, okay, we got to go, no huddle, throwing the ball downfield, and they would score and then not quite get there. So either figure it out early on or do the quick stuff first. They got to do something different because they're not doing, I guess what they're trying to do isn't working, but their panic is bailing them out a little bit.
You know what's go ahead, Rhino.
Just to that point, I mean, you saw that in both Green Bay games against Minnesota this year. Vikings jump out way ahead, and then Green Bay is trying to run the ball, and all of a sudden they're down by 2 or 3 scores, and they're like, oh crap. And then, to your point, they go into that throwing all over the place, and then they get back into the game. But it would end up being too little too late on a lot of that stuff.
Sometimes I look at players, right? You look at a Jordan Love, and all kidding aside, sometimes you just wonder if the players are mismatched, right? Like I think if a Jordan Love, maybe he doesn't, in an alternate reality, he doesn't sign that massive contract. Maybe he goes to Minnesota under KOC. Maybe KOC can do a little bit more because obviously KOC is the big KOC. We'll just keep saying that, Rhino, the big KOC. He can do anything with quarterbacks. And I don't know if, Green Bay media is talking about this, and maybe Nick, a little bit more about this too. When you talk about quarterbacks, like it seemed to me as an untrained eye that Jordan Love throws off his back foot too much. Like, I don't know if that's kind of like what if he was to take a step forward again, if that the footwork would help at all, or because he has the arm, he has the ability, but it just it wasn't translating. And obviously Packer fans were like, well, he's hurt, but it had to be more than that.
Yeah,
didn't it?
I'll give you an example, and this is gonna ruffle feathers. Okay, he's a better version of this, in my opinion. Okay, y'all, like just brace yourself. Okay, he's Cutler-esque. You don't have the attitude. He's got a crazy good arm. He believes in his arm, which gets him into trouble. He's like, I'm gonna fit that in, and he'll make crazy throws. You're like, I don't know how he completed that. Cutler did that all the time. And then also, like, why do you throw that pick? Like, he thought he could do that, but Cutler was on his back foot all the time. And it led to high balls. It led to some accuracy issues, some low completion percentage, which is what Love runs into. So that's kind of how I feel right now, watching his Utah State tape, watching him so far in the NFL, and then You know, I know there's an injury too, but I think also thinking he can do a lot kind of leads to some more hits and injuries as well. So he's better than that. Okay, don't get me wrong. He's better. He doesn't have the attitude. You know, he's a nice guy. I for everything I've heard, he's actually a really good dude. But I think that's a little bit more of his trajectory. But I think that's better. Like if you frame it that way, and he doesn't have to be a Hall of Fame type quarterback, like that's a lot of pressure to keep like always talking about, like everyone, like we've done it 3 times in a row. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. Like, why don't we just work on being a good player? You know what I mean? Like take a step back and the rest will fall into place. But I feel like that's like where the measurement is. And that's not fair to measure someone that he has to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, like anybody.
Well, and another thing with Love, I've kind of noticed, you know, some of the stuff you mentioned about him coming out of college and stuff. I don't know that sitting behind Aaron Rodgers and learning was the best thing for him either, because you watch Rodgers play, his form isn't great a lot of times, but his talent overcomes it. And, you know, I think Love, in some of the games I've watched, he's tried to emulate what Rodgers used to do, and he can't do it. And it's not a knock on Jordan Love. It's just I think he's trying to be more Aaron Rodgers than he is trying to be Jordan Love. And that's probably holding him back.
I can see that.
Mm-hmm. And just to go back to the throwing off the back foot comment for a second, he was clocked with the hardest thrown ball in the NFL, Jordan Love was, and he stepped into that throw. So why would you not want to do that more? There is a lot of his deep balls where he is falling backwards, is what it looks like, and he's lobbing it up for nobody to catch. So I don't know if that's a footwork issue on his part or if he's just last minute like, oh, I got to get rid of this ball. But step into those throws, Jordan, and you know you'll have more of those zipped in passes that go for touchdowns like you did to Tucker Kraft.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, speaking of kind of quarterback development, I mean, when you look at JJ McCarthy with the Vikings, you know, I don't know if it's good or bad what happened in 2024 with the Vikings for JJ McCarthy, right? So you have them do how well they did, right? And then JJ McCarthy stepping in this team, and you know there's going to be expectations. So Rhino, when you kind of look at expectations for JJ McCarthy, and just kind of gauge that with what Vikings fans are thinking, because obviously you were excited and there was a huge letdown, but are you going to be able to just kind of temper the expectations for JJ McCarthy in that development, and just kind of what he's going to have to do for this Vikings team to be successful in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, the kid's going to have, you know, those games. He's basically coming in as a rookie again this year because he didn't play last year. You know, I talked about a little bit earlier about the behind the scenes stuff that he was doing while he was rehabbing and that kind of stuff. But I mean, the kid is a gamer. We saw that, you know, when he played for Michigan. Yeah, there's all the thing about, well, he didn't put up the gaudy numbers that a lot of these other guys did. Well, Michigan played old school football when you can go out there and just say, I'm going to run over you and keep running over you until you stop me, and nobody did. You don't have to throw the ball 35, 40 times a game. But, you know, the kid has lost 3 games since high school. I mean, he's got that it factor. He's got that moxie. He's got, you know, I remember listening to a lot of the beat guys that were at training camp last year when he was out there and they said players were just naturally gravitating towards the kid. And, you know, there was significant chatter that McCarthy was going to push to be the week 1 starter. I mean, he was playing better than Darnold was in preseason. And I think if, you know, some of that was a little bit probably overzealous on the thoughts, but because O'Connell has had a plan set out for this the whole time. You know, he made that comment early last year, you know, that teams fail young quarterbacks long before a young quarterback will fail their team for the, you know, talking about ones that don't pan out. That being said, I think absolute worst case scenario last year, had McCarthy not gotten hurt after that kind of a clunker of a game that Darnold had against Jacksonville, I think McCarthy would have started the next week, and he'd have finished out the year.
I wonder if it would have been better. Obviously, the Vikings had a fantastic season with Sam Darnold, but I almost wonder if it would have been, obviously if something, if he didn't get hurt, right? But it would have been better to have J.J. McCarthy this year and maybe have an average year, as opposed to, the year that they had, because they would have seen what he was like with Aaron Jones. Because I don't even know what the situation is going to be for running back yet. And when you have a young quarterback, it's important to have a solid running game. I mean, I think you probably attested that, Nick, especially with what Caleb was able to do in some games when we actually had a good running game. And others were, you have a rookie quarterback or young quarterback, you have to have that solid running game.
Well, in terms of advanced analytics, in terms of rushing yards per carry over expectations, that takes into account blocking, defensive front, etc. Minimum 90 carries. DeAndre Swift was last in the NFL in negative. He was negative rushing yards under expectation. We'll just call that one. So yes, I think that's huge, because then that's, instead of a 3rd and 6, it's a 3rd and 8. Like et cetera down the line. And so that was actually one of my questions, is because with Aaron Jones being a free agent, there's some offensive line concerns because of injuries, right? How are guys going to heal up? Christian Darrisaw, I think, is an unbelievable player, but how is he going to heal up, and when's he going to be back? Brian O'Neill, I think, had some back stuff too. But what's going to be the plan in terms of the running game for Minnesota? Because obviously you have Hawkinson, Addison, and Jefferson. But what's going to be the plan for the rushing game? Because you guys are a very complete offense. It's not just a one ticket show there.
Right. I think there's a decent chance that Jones probably comes back. He wants to be here. He's talked about that multiple times. I think they would like to have him back. I don't think they're going to bring him back, at the $8 million that he got last year. But even with that, I think they're going to be looking for another running back to complement him. This is a pretty deep running back draft class, so I think they're probably looking there. The one thing that the Vikings don't have in the run game right now is, that guy that can hit the home run ball. Aaron Jones is good for, breaking off a 15, 20-yard run once in a while, but, he doesn't have that top gear anymore that you hit the hole and takes it for 70. But the biggest, even bigger than that, though, is we got to fix the interior offensive line, because I think I saw a stat last year, and this just blew my mind when I saw it. It was like 70% of the runs, there was contact at the line of scrimmage in the run game last year. And I mean, our Garrett Bradbury, I've been out on Garrett Bradbury for the last 3-4 years at least. I affectionately refer to him as Badberry instead of Bradbury, but the guard spots, Reisner was good in pass blocking, but he's not much of a run blocker. Brandel on the left side was pretty decent when Darrisaw was in there, but when Darrisaw went out, Brandel fell off a cliff. So I think the Vikings are going to have to address that interior offensive line. Kevin O'Connell even alluded to it in his season-ending press conference. And the sexy name everybody's talking about, is Trey Smith. You got to get Trey Smith. But I think Trey Smith is probably going to be at a contract point that the Vikings aren't going to want to go that high. Kwesi being, the stock trader and all that's kind of analytics type stuff. He's always got that walk away number that he'll go up to that, but he's not going to go past it. I think Trey Smith might go above that. But, looking there's plenty of other options. And the one guy I think they should be showing interest in would be Will Freeze from Indy. And then, you could get him and then look at an upgrade at the center, probably for not a whole lot more than what you'd be spending on Trey Smith just by himself. If you go get a Ryan Kelly or a Drew Dahlman or somebody like that at center, you patch that, fix up that interior offensive line. It's going to do a world of good for the running game. And like as you mentioned earlier, having a good running game with a young quarterback is essential. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the questions I have for you guys is Minnesota is just, they don't have any draft picks. They have a first, and I think it's first, and then what is it, like a fifth? I mean, it's not a lot.
We get a third comp from Cousins, so we've got a first, a third, and 2 fifths. I think it is.
Okay, so I mean, the third's basically a fourth because it's right at the end. So
right, yeah.
So, and I agree with you. Like, it's a deep running back class, and so I mean, I feel like you guys almost have to, even though it depends on a trading partner, like have to trade back just to get more assets to fill some of the spots.
Yeah, and I think in the first round, that's probably what happens, unless there's a guy that is sitting there at 24 that they absolutely love and don't think that they can risk trading back 3 or 4 spots and still get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what do you think? I mean, like, what do you think defensively? Because you mentioned offense. I'm curious your thoughts on Minnesota's defense.
A couple of big things. I mean, our back end, we're going to have to do something with now. I think they probably go after, like a DJ Reed or somebody like that in free agency. Gilmore most likely is done. We haven't had an official word yet, but I wouldn't be opposed to them bringing back Shaq Griffin. He played pretty well for us last year. You never heard his name during the game, which when you're a cornerback usually means they're not throwing at you. Mm-hmm. He's doing his job. Byron Murphy, I think he's another one that's going to be priced out of what we're going to want to spend. And Spotrac has him at like $22 million. $22 million for a slot corner is a lot of money. So I think he's probably allowed to walk. I think they try to go re-sign Cam Bynum. Sounds like here it's leaning more towards Harrison Smith coming back for 1 more year. So I think the safety room is.
How old is he now?
35.
And he's been in the NFL. There's like those guys in college, like in the Big Ten, like Brian Cardinal. I felt like played, basketball for like 8 seasons at Purdue.
Yeah.
Like Harrison Smith has been there. I feel like since the
drafted
people leaders feels like.
Yeah.
So I think, cornerback is going to have, we're good at edge rusher. We hit gold last year with Grenard and Van Ginkel, plus we got Dallas Turner that we drafted. Mm-hmm. They do need some more help on the interior defensive line. I would love to see them get somebody that can put some more pressure up the middle. We don't really have that. We've got good run stuffers, but they're not much for pass rushing. A big nasty nose tackle would be nice because Harrison Phillips, I think, would be better moved out and playing, kind of the 5 tech instead of in at the 0.
I think Blake Cashman was such an underrated signing for you guys.
Oh, absolutely.
He was unreal, man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He was. It's almost incalculable how much difference that signing made. And like you said, it's very underrated. We noticed that during the regular season, he was out. He was out against the Rams and against Detroit in those 2 early games, and it was very noticeable.
Yeah,
the guy is extremely smart. He got a nose for the ball. He's was the perfect guy to put in the middle in Flores' defense to give the green dot because he ran that whole show pretty much. So.
Well, I mean, what I like about this discussion, I definitely appreciate all this discussion, but Nick, I'm hearing lots of Packers question marks, lots of Vikings question marks. The Lions are still up there, some question marks. Obviously, the Bears, we have question marks at line. Obviously, every team can be in on free agents. I hear the Trey Smith, I think in Combine, there's rumblings that he's probably going to re-sign with the Chiefs, which that would not surprise me, right? But with all these question marks, I think there's a lane for Lane to also come in on my Bears.
Yeah, man. Do you want me to go with the Bears?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the biggest holes for Chicago would be, I think, wide receiver 3 is a secret thing that they need. Tight end 2, We know Ben Johnson likes, quietly, y'all, Detroit had a really, really deep and good tight end room the past couple of years. So that's something. Running back could be one, but 3 spots in the interior of the O-line is basically like the Minnesota and Green Bay secondary. It's like, we have no clue what that's like. It's like a deserted island. So,
I was going to say, Nick, as well, I believe Ben Johnson did start out, or at least he was, before he's an offensive coordinator, he was the tight end coach for the Lions. So he knows tight ends. So I'm liking that. Keep going. Yeah.
I think that could be even a sneaky second or third round pick, is because it's a good and deep tight end class. And then D tackle, we really fell apart when Andrew Billings went down. Yep. So adding maybe 1 or 2 D tackles, and then D end, they just cut DeMarcus Walker. I don't think that they have to mess with linebacker or the secondary. I think we'll just see how that pans out. So really, it's a trenches off season. But the difference that Chicago has that the rest of the division doesn't is they have a top 10 pick. It's 10. They have 2 second-round picks, and they're flush with cash. So really walking out of this offseason with, 6 or 7 new starters is actually plausible, that they're not just band-aids. Like, you could have a few impact guys here and there. How they all come together, like we thought Keenan Allen was going to be good, but it didn't really pan out. So that part is to be determined. But I think with Ben Johnson having that trenches in Detroit, I think that's going to be a huge focus for Chicago's offseason.
Now, obviously, I don't think, any of us has been a professional, football player. But when you look at it, obviously, last week, we talked about like what would draw a free agent to a team. Obviously, money is huge. It's up there, right? And you have the money. But also, I think most of these players also want to win, right? And so which team gives them the the best opportunity to win and be a part of just a winner overall. And, the Packers have the, nostalgia, have that kind of gravitas as an organization. But when you look at it, question marks that maybe weren't there last offseason about Jordan Love. There's some question marks. Obviously, there's still some question marks about, Caleb Williams and taking that step up. But when you have that excitement, and we haven't been that franchise to have the number one coaching, prospect for a while come into our team. Plus what we have in Caleb Williams, just that excitement. Obviously, a lot of people are saying Jaden Daniels is better than whatever. I'm not listening to that stuff, but there's a lot of excitement there, and that has to play into it when you think about free agents and what offers they're going to take. So I'm excited about that part of it, Nick. I don't know about you. What about you?
Yeah, well, I think, it's, Detroit was a laughing stock, right, for a long time.
Yeah.
The Colts were until they got Peyton and Andrew Luck. And, you could say the same thing for Washington right now, right? Laughing stock. And then now they're not. And then you start getting the assets and building it in. Minnesota and Green Bay haven't. They've been very, like, you could say the Mike Tomlin type thing. They've had the peaks. They've never had the Super Bowl, right? Well, Green Bay had one, but Minnesota hasn't. Like you have these peaks, but you guys have always been pretty steady. I think of Minnesota, like, from Warren Moon to Randall Cunningham to Brad Johnson, like, you guys have had steadiness. Like, Chicago hasn't had that. So I think that's one thing to overcome. But Ben Johnson chose Chicago, and I think that says a lot. Dennis Allen is, I think, a top half of the league D coordinator. Like, you go through the list, I think Chicago is no longer being a laughing stock, and it could be a destination, especially when you're talking about money. Free agency, you always have to overspend. I'm not going to say that people are going to come here like a discount, but I think Chicago winning 9 or 10 games isn't like unrealistic next year.
It's going to be a tough schedule, but yeah, I absolutely agree. Lane, thoughts on that?
Well, just looking at free agency as a whole, like you had Aaron Rodgers a couple years ago saying people don't come to Green Bay to just come to Green Bay. They come to play with me.
Yep.
And they don't have that factor anymore. Right now, if you just go off of it, if you're a free agent and you want to win games, you're going to go to either Minnesota or Detroit right now because they're proven winners. They've been the top of the division. If you want to try and get a jump on the possible exciting, up and coming team that also has a big city around it to go do whatever else when you're not playing football, you go to Chicago. I don't know how many people are really thinking I'm going to come to Green Bay right now when there's lots of questions to be answered. A lot of the guys say you're in the middle of nowhere doing nothing during the off seasons and stuff. So I know they have.
I will give you this though, Lane. Like last offseason, you guys had it, right? You had the excitement with Love. Then you got McKinney, which I was shocked. Like
I'm shocked too.
He was unbelievable. And Jacobs, like the two signings you guys had, he spent big anyways, really paid off. So you do have that going for you.
Right. And hopefully that's enough to get some guys in. But if they're looking right now, I'm not sure that Green Bay is necessarily the destination in the NFC North right now. They might have to look not necessarily at the top of the free agency list, but more second round of the free agents once they start getting signed to really bring in guys that are going to make a difference.
Well, Green Bay has never typically been. I mean, last year, of course, they got Josh Jacobs and whatnot, but they haven't been, seem like real super big spenders on that first wave of free agency anyway. So, is it a lot different than what it normally is for them? Maybe not, but.
Well, tell you what, guys, this has been a fantastic episode. I appreciate everyone coming on tonight. Lots of great stuff, lots of great comments as well. There was even an argument within the comments that I wasn't even going to share. It was fantastic as well. Love the engagement, and obviously, love having all these perspectives. Rhino, you've been on quite a few times. Where can we find you as we close out?
Facebook and YouTube at Vikings Uncensored, Twitter X at Vikes Uncensored, and like I said, we'll be back next week with preview of the start of free agency and all the latest on that. So come check us out.
Absolutely. Like, subscribe. Lots of stuff yet to come for that. Lane, always glad to have you back on. There aren't a lot of good-natured Packer fans, but thankfully we found a lot of them coming on with us, and you're one of those as well. So appreciate you coming on. Where can everyone find you as we close out?
I appreciate that. I try to be realistic. I know there's a lot of unrealistic Packers fans on social media that I just laugh at a lot of the time. You can find me on Twitter at LHenkins4, LHENKINS 4. And if you want to see any of my previous Packers travels, you can find me at the same username on TikTok.
Awesome. Definitely like and subscribe. Lots of great stuff there as well. And always have a ton of great insights when you come on. A lot of great conversation as well. Where can everyone find you, Nick, as we close out?
At _ Nick Whalen on Twitter. And then if you want to check out the Bears podcast, I do it is the Hallis Beat, which is on YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you guys can find podcasts. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Hey, this is an exciting, it was an exciting offseason for the division. Obviously we thought that we'd have a Super Bowl participant. We still could in 2025, but it's an exciting time, I think, as division to have teams that we're all relevant in some capacity, right? It's not like, we're the Jets or we have teams that have an opportunity to be successful. I'm excited for that. And obviously I'm excited each week to be here with, everyone that joins us. NFL Outdated on Twitter X, on YouTube, and you can find us on Freezin 4 Pod on TikTok. And Wednesdays, 9:30, always chopping up. So thanks everyone for joining us. Once again, this has been Freezin 4 NFC North Podcast, and we will see you again next week. Thanks again, everybody.
See you guys.